Across time and culture, myths have whispered truths that transcend borders, shaping beliefs, rituals, and sacred stories. In Sacred Echoes, How Myths Shape Every Religion, we explore how ancient tales of gods, heroes, creation, and cosmic battles have left their imprint on the world's spiritual traditions. From the legends of Mesopotamia to the scriptures of today, these echoes of myth connect humanity's search for meaning. Join us as we trace the threads linking myth to faith, uncovering the hidden patterns that reveal how every religion carries the footprint of stories older than history itself. Across cultures and centuries, myths have served as the invisible threads weaving together human understanding, spirituality, and morality. They are not merely fanciful stories, but profound attempts to grapple with existence, the divine, and the unseen forces that govern life. Every religion, regardless of geography or era, carries the imprint of these sacred narratives. They echo ancient insights, moral archetypes, and symbolic patterns that remain relevant today. In exploring how myths shape every religion, we uncover both the diversity and the unity of human spiritual imagination. The nature of myth. To understand the influence of myth on religion, we must first define what myth is. Myths are not simply old tales. They are symbolic frameworks through which communities interpret reality. They explain the origins of the universe, the purpose of humanity, and the rules by which life should be lived. While some myths appear fantastical, gods walking among humans, cosmic battles, or enchanted objects, they encode deep psychological and spiritual truths. Carl Jung, the famed psychologist, referred to myths as expressions of the collective unconscious. Myths give form to archetypes, the universal patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior that resonate across cultures. These archetypes include the hero, the trickster, the mother, and the wise old man. By embedding these archetypes in stories, myths provide a roadmap for moral understanding and spiritual development. Religion, in turn, often adopts these mythic structures, turning them into rituals, teachings, and doctrines. Creation myths, foundations of faith. Creation myths are perhaps the most universal and influential type of myth. They attempt to answer the eternal question, where did we come from? Across the world, creation myths share surprising similarities, even among civilizations that had no direct contact. In Mesopotamia, the Enuma Elish tells of a chaotic, watery cosmos from which order emerges through divine conflict. The Babylonian gods Marduk and Tiamat battle, and through this struggle, the world and humanity are born. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the universe arises from the primordial waters of Nun, and through the acts of gods like Adam or Ptah, order and life emerge. These myths are mirrored in Abrahamic traditions. In Genesis, God brings order out of chaos, separating light from darkness, land from sea, and establishing the rhythms of creation. Hinduism's Rig Veda speaks of the cosmic Purusha, whose body becomes the universe, while in Greek myth, the primordial chaos gives birth to Gaia, Nyx, and other foundational deities. The recurrence of these themes, chaos, divine order, cosmic struggle, reveals a shared human need to explain existence. These myths form the backbone of religious cosmology, shaping how societies perceive the divine and the human role in the cosmos. Heroic myths, models of virtue and trial. Beyond creation, myths often center on heroes, figures who journey into unknown realms, confront chaos, and emerge transformed. Heroic myths serve as moral and spiritual templates, offering examples of courage, sacrifice, and wisdom. In Greek mythology, Heracles' 12 labors represent a journey of redemption and perseverance. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the eponymous hero confronts mortality, seeking eternal life while learning the limits and responsibilities of humanity. In Hindu epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, heroes like Rama and Arjuna navigate moral dilemmas, uphold dharma, righteous duty, and embody ideals of virtue. Religions often integrate these hero narratives into their teachings. Jesus in Christianity is depicted as a heroic figure who confronts suffering, offers redemption, and transforms the spiritual landscape. The Buddha's journey to enlightenment mirrors the archetypal hero's path, highlighting trials, inner struggle, and ultimate transcendence. Through these stories, myths shape the moral frameworks within religions, providing examples for followers to emulate. Cosmic battles, good, evil, and the balance of forces. Myths frequently depict cosmic battles between opposing forces, order and chaos, light and darkness, good and evil. These narratives are foundational to many religious doctrines, symbolizing the eternal struggle between spiritual principles. In Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda represents truth and light, while Angra Mainyu embodies deceit and darkness, mirroring the dualistic struggle evident in many mythologies. Norse myths describe the Ragnarok, a cataclysmic battle in which gods and giants clash, reflecting cyclical destruction and renewal. In Christianity, the struggle between God and Satan embodies the moral and spiritual conflict at the heart of human experience. These stories do more than entertain. They teach believers about the stakes of morality, the inevitability of conflict, and the need for vigilance in the pursuit of virtue. Religions inherit these mythic frameworks, codifying them into ethical teachings, rituals, and narratives of salvation or enlightenment. Symbols, rituals, and sacred storytelling. Myths also influence religion through symbols and rituals. Symbolism allows abstract, spiritual truths to be expressed in tangible forms. The serpent, for example, appears across myths as both a symbol of wisdom and danger, from the serpent in Eden to the Ouroboros in alchemical traditions. Similarly, water represents purification, transformation, and life across Hindu, Christian, and indigenous rituals. Rituals themselves are often dramatizations of mythic narratives. In Christianity, baptism reenacts themes of death and rebirth reminiscent of ancient myths of cleansing and renewal. Hindu pujas invoke gods and cosmic principles, embodying the mythic order. These practices are more than symbolic. They connect participants to the sacred stories that structure their worldview, reinforcing belief through lived experience. Myth as moral and philosophical compass. Religious laws, moral codes, and philosophical teachings often trace their roots to myth. The Ten Commandments, for instance, emerge from a narrative context in which God shapes a community's ethical framework. Similarly, the Hindu Dharma is interwoven with stories of divine and heroic action, illustrating how one should live in alignment with cosmic law. Even in philosophical traditions, myths serve as teaching tools. Plato's allegories, including the myth of air, use storytelling to convey ethical and metaphysical truths. Myths bridge the gap between abstract principles and human understanding, providing concrete examples through narrative form. Religion, in adopting these myths, ensures that ethical and spiritual lessons are both memorable and transformative. Universal patterns and interconnectedness. One of the most striking revelations in studying myth across religions is the universality of certain patterns. Creation from chaos, heroic trials, cosmic battles, and journeys of transformation recur across continents and eras. These shared structures suggest that myths respond to common human experiences: birth, death, morality, the quest for meaning, and the confrontation with the unknown. This universality allows religions to echo each other, consciously or unconsciously, across time. The story of a flood appears in Mesopotamian, Hebrew, Hindu, and Native American myths. Concepts of resurrection, rebirth, or cyclical renewal recur in Egyptian, Greek, Christian, and Buddhist traditions. These sacred echoes reveal an underlying interconnectedness of human spirituality, showing that myths are less about specific cultures and more about shared existential questions. Myths in the modern religious imagination. Even today, myths continue to shape religious thought. Modern believers may not always recognize the mythic roots of their faith, yet the influence persists. Stories of divine intervention, moral exemplars, and cosmic order continue to guide ethical decision-making, communal identity, and spiritual practice. Contemporary religious literature, art, and cinema often draw upon these ancient narratives, demonstrating that myths remain living, evolving forces. The power of myth lies in its adaptability. It can be reinterpreted, recontextualized, and renewed while retaining its core message. Religion, in turn, channels this power, creating continuity between past, present, and future. The psychological dimension. Myths are not only cultural artifacts, but psychological tools. They help individuals confront fear, loss, mortality, and the unknown. By embodying archetypal struggles in narrative form, myths provide a safe space to explore complex emotions and ethical dilemmas. Religions harness this function, offering structure, guidance, and meaning. Rituals, prayers, and sacred stories become vehicles for psychological processing, community cohesion, and spiritual growth. The echoes of myth within religion are therefore both external and internal, shaping societies while nurturing individual consciousness. Listening to the sacred echoes. When we speak of sacred echoes, we are referring to more than historical influence. We are witnessing a living dialogue between humanity and the divine. Myths are the seeds from which religions grow, the undercurrent shaping how humans understand life, death, morality, and the cosmos. They reveal patterns, archetypes, and moral frameworks that persist across cultures, proving that no belief system exists in isolation. To listen to these sacred echoes is to attune ourselves to the subtle, enduring threads that link humanity's spiritual past with its present, and with the questions that will guide our future. Understanding the nature of sacred echoes. Sacred echoes are not merely stories preserved in ancient texts or oral traditions. They are vibrations of meaning, moral insight, and spiritual resonance that reverberate through time. Each myth, legend, and ritual carries within it a distilled understanding of human existence, our fears, our hopes, our encounters with the unknown. Unlike historical records, which seek to document events objectively, sacred echoes convey truth through symbolism, metaphor, and narrative. They speak to the human psyche in ways that reason alone often cannot reach, offering frameworks for understanding both the external universe and our inner landscapes. The universality of sacred echoes is striking. Across continents and millennia, humanity has returned to similar themes: the creation of the cosmos from primordial chaos, the trials of heroic figures, the inevitability of death and the promise of renewal, and the struggle between light and darkness. These recurring patterns suggest that sacred echoes respond to fundamental human questions, forming a shared spiritual language that transcends individual cultures. Myths as living dialogues. One of the most profound aspects of sacred echoes is their capacity to evolve. Myths are not static, they adapt to the cultures that inherit them. In one era, a myth may appear as a story of divine conflict. In another, it may be recast as a philosophical parable or a moral allegory. Yet the core resonance remains. By tracing the journey of a single myth across time, we witness a conversation between generations, a dialogue in which each retelling adds nuance, interpretation, and insight. For example, the flood narrative appears in countless traditions, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible, to tales in Hindu and indigenous cultures. Each version reflects the environmental, social, and spiritual concerns of its people, yet the central lesson remains: the delicate balance between humanity and the forces of nature, the consequences of moral failure, and the possibility of renewal. In this way, Sacred Echoes demonstrate the adaptability of myth while preserving essential truths. Archetypes and universal patterns. Carl Jung's theory of archetypes provides a useful lens for understanding sacred echoes. Archetypes are universal symbols and motifs embedded in the human psyche, recurring across cultures and eras. Myths give these archetypes narrative form, allowing communities to externalize and explore inner realities. The hero, the trickster, the wise old man, the mother, and the shadow are among the most prominent archetypes, each carrying moral, psychological, and spiritual significance. Religions adopt and amplify these archetypal patterns. The story of Christ in Christianity, the Buddha's journey to enlightenment, or the heroic exploits of Rama in Hindu tradition all reflect the archetypal hero's journey: departure, trial, transformation, and return. These stories resonate because they mirror the human experience, offering guidance, inspiration, and a roadmap for ethical and spiritual development. Sacred Echoes, therefore, are not only historical artifacts, but living, psychological instruments that shape human consciousness. The ethical dimension of Sacred Echoes. Beyond their psychological resonance, Sacred Echoes provide moral frameworks. Myths often dramatize the consequences of ethical choices, illustrating the rewards of virtue and the perils of vice. These moral patterns, once codified into religious teachings, become guiding principles for societies. Consider the Bhagavad Gita, part of the Mahabharata. The narrative presents Arjuna's moral and spiritual dilemma on the battlefield, questioning duty, righteousness, and the ethics of action. Through dialogue with Krishna, Arjuna learns to navigate these challenges, embodying principles that extend far beyond the literal story. Similarly, the Ten Commandments in Judaism, while framed as divine law, are grounded in narrative and mythic context, communicating moral imperatives through sacred storytelling. In these examples, Sacred Echoes operate as ethical mirrors, reflecting the values that sustain civilizations. Rituals as living echoes. Rituals are another medium through which sacred echoes continue to shape human experience. Ceremonies, festivals, and sacred practices are often dramatizations of mythic narratives, connecting participants to archetypal patterns and moral truths. Baptism in Christianity, for instance, symbolizes death and rebirth, echoing myths of transformation and renewal found in many traditions. Hindu pujas and yajnas, sacrificial rituals, reenact cosmic principles, reinforcing the sacred order of the universe. Through ritual, sacred echoes become embodied. They are no longer abstract stories, but lived experiences, allowing participants to internalize moral and spiritual lessons. Rituals bridge the gap between myth and daily life, ensuring that sacred truths remain accessible, meaningful, and transformative across generations. Death, renewal, and the cycles of existence. A central theme in many Sacred Echoes is the cycle of death and renewal. Human beings have always confronted mortality and the impermanence of life. Myths offer symbolic frameworks for understanding death, promising transformation, continuity, or rebirth. In Egyptian mythology, the death and resurrection of Osiris symbolize the eternal cycle of life, death, and regeneration. In Christianity, the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus convey a similar message, demonstrating that suffering can lead to transformation and that life persists beyond apparent endings. In Buddhist thought, samsara and karma frame existence as a cycle of death, rebirth, and moral consequence, emphasizing the potential for spiritual liberation. By engaging with these echoes, humans find ways to navigate the existential realities of mortality and moral accountability. The role of cosmic battles. Sacred echoes often depict struggles between opposing forces, whether good and evil, order and chaos, or light and darkness. These cosmic battles are not merely fantastical. They embody the moral and spiritual conflicts inherent in human experience. Zoroastrianism presents the duality of Ahura Mazda, truth and light, and Angra Mainyu, destruction and deceit. Norse mythology recounts Ragnarok, the cataclysmic battle between gods and giants, illustrating cycles of destruction and renewal. Even in monotheistic traditions, the tension between divine authority and human rebellion, or between good and evil, resonates with these mythic battles. Sacred echoes convey that struggle is intrinsic to existence, and that moral vigilance, courage, and wisdom are necessary to navigate life's challenges. Cross-cultural resonances. Listening to sacred echoes also reveals the interconnectedness of human spirituality. Despite differences in language, geography, and historical context, many myths convey remarkably similar themes. Creation, destruction, moral trial, and divine intervention recur in civilizations as diverse as Mesopotamia, India, Greece, and the Americas. These resonances suggest that myths address universal human concerns: the origin of the cosmos, the meaning of life, the nature of good and evil, and the path to spiritual fulfillment. By comparing sacred echoes across cultures, we gain insight into humanity's shared quest for understanding and the ways in which spiritual wisdom is encoded into narrative form. Modern relevance of sacred echoes. In contemporary times, sacred echoes continue to influence religion, philosophy, art, and literature. Even in secular societies, myths shape cultural narratives, moral expectations, and collective identity. Movies, novels, and visual arts often draw on mythic archetypes, while modern spiritual movements reinterpret ancient stories to address contemporary concerns. Religions, too, adapt these echoes to new contexts. Rituals, ethical teachings, and theological interpretations are reframed, yet the underlying patterns remain. By listening to sacred echoes today, we gain a deeper understanding of our spiritual inheritance and the ways in which humanity continues to grapple with fundamental questions of existence, morality, and the divine. Psychological and spiritual insights. Sacred echoes also serve as tools for introspection and self-understanding. Myths externalize inner conflicts, fears, and aspirations, allowing individuals to confront their own psychological landscapes. Through reflection on these stories, believers can navigate ethical dilemmas, cultivate virtues, and pursue spiritual growth. The archetypal hero's journey, for instance, mirrors the challenges of personal development, leaving the familiar, confronting inner and outer obstacles, achieving transformation, and returning with wisdom. This pattern recurs in religious narratives worldwide, offering guidance not only for moral action, but also for personal spiritual evolution. Sacred echoes, therefore, function as both cultural inheritance and individual compass. The transformative power of listening. To listen to sacred echoes is not simply to study myths or religious texts. It is to engage in an active, contemplative practice. It involves recognizing the enduring resonance of these stories, attuning to the lessons they convey, and allowing them to inform both thought and action. Listening requires patience and openness. One must look beyond literal interpretations to perceive the symbolic, ethical, and spiritual dimensions embedded in the narrative. By doing so, we can uncover insights into human nature, morality, and the divine, insights that have guided civilizations for millennia. Sacred echoes invite dialogue, reflection, and transformation, offering timeless wisdom for both individuals and communities. The eternal conversation. Sacred echoes remind us that religion, myth, and spirituality are not isolated phenomena, but interconnected elements, of a human quest for meaning. Myths are the seedbeds from which ethical frameworks, rituals, and spiritual practices emerge. They encode archetypes, moral truths, and cosmological principles that continue to shape human consciousness. By listening to these echoes, we participate in an eternal conversation between past and present, human and divine. We recognize that our beliefs, stories, and rituals are part of a vast tapestry woven over millennia, a tapestry that continues to evolve. Sacred echoes are living currents, carrying insight, guidance, and inspiration through the ages. In a world of rapid change and cultural complexity, these echoes offer stability, perspective, and connection. They remind us that our struggles, questions, and aspirations are not isolated, but shared across generations and civilizations. Listening to the sacred echoes is an act of humility, curiosity, and reverence, a practice that deepens our understanding of humanity, spirituality, and the universe itself. Ultimately, to heed these echoes is to acknowledge that myth and religion are not relics of the past, but dynamic, living forces that continue to shape human experience. The sacred echoes call us to awareness, guiding us to ethical living, spiritual insight, and a profound sense of interconnectedness. By engaging with them, we find not only the wisdom of the ages, but also the tools to navigate our own journey in the world, attuned to the rhythms, patterns, and mysteries that define existence. The myths we've explored are more than stories. They are the echoes of human imagination shaping faith across millennia. From creation myths to heroic epics, these narratives remind us that every religion carries fragments of the same timeless truths. By tracing these sacred echoes, we see the connections that unite humanity beyond culture, language, or doctrine. If you've been inspired to see your own beliefs through the lens of myth, subscribe and join us on this journey through history, legend, and spirituality. The stories may be ancient, but their influence is eternal,